Hi there, Tom from bworks. I'm one of the lead instructors here. I have my trusty Trek here. We're gonna go ahead and change the front tire. You'll have to disengage the brake first. On this specific one, it's fairly easy. There's a little noodle right here, this metal piece. It's called the noodle. You have to take it out of this carrier. I pull on the brake noodle, push on the other arm with my other hand, and just wiggle that out. Some of the tools that you'll use when you're changing a flat tire, if you have a bolt-on wheel, meaning no quick release, you'll need a 15mm wrench to loosen the nuts on the outside of the wheel. But to get the tire off, you're going to need tire tools. Now, to take it out, you undo the quick release, loosen this nut on this opposite side, and your wheel should be able to clear the fork. When you have the wheel out, even though you've got a flat tire, you're gonna have to let the air out of the tire because there's still probably gonna be a little bit of residual air left in the inner tube. If you have fancy valves like this bike, generally going to be a little metal nut on the valve. Go ahead and take that off, or else you're not gonna be able to get the inner tube out of the rim. But this little poke end is really great for pressing down on the Schrader valve to let the air out. You do want to unstick the rubber from the side of the rim. So I usually squeeze the tire all the way around. The tire should be nice and loose on that rim now. And I find the valve, turn the wheel upside down like so, so that you start on the opposite side of the valve. I use my spoon end and dig that lever right underneath the bead of the tire, so I can actually lift that tire over the rim. You can see that working right there. And once I've got one tool in place, I grab my other tool and put it one spoke next to it so that there are two in the wheel underneath the bead, about a spoke apart. I'll push them both down at the same time, and you can notice now that I can click one tool in to the spoke so I don't lose it. At this point, I can just pull that tool all the way around. Now I've got one side of that tire all the way off. I should be able to have some space. See, there's some space between the rim and the tire right here. I should just be able to pull it off. And you can use your colorful label as a point of reference. That valve, most professionals will put the valve stem by the colorful label of the tire. So when I pull this out, I've got my loose inner tube, and I can actually find where there's a puncture in the tube to determine if there's still anything inside of the tire that I have to remove. You don't really ever want to take your fingers and run your fingers on the inside of that tire because you never know if there's still going to be glass stuck in the tire. If you use that point of reference, you find the hole in your tube, line your valve back up with your tire and be like, oh, there's the glass that was stuck in my tire. If it's not there, just flip the tube around and do it on the other side. Oh, there it is. A lot of times, if you do not pump your tire up to the proper PSI, you'll have two little incisions on the inside of that tube that will actually be kind of like a snake biting the inner tube. We call them snake bites. And that's because you haven't been running the proper pressure in your tire. Each tire has a recommended pressure range. So for this tire, you can find it on the side of the tire. It says 50 to 75 PSI. Now that you've gotten your flat found, you've got a new tube, you can either patch your tube or put a brand new in. I recommend putting a brand new tube in once you've found the source of your flat and removed that source. I still patch my tubes. I'll take them home and do it in my basement because it's going to be a much easier thing to do while you're at home and not all sweaty off of after a bike ride. So I'll take my valve. I'm gonna put a little bit of air in my tube because it's going to be easier for me to fit that inner tube inside of my tire because it's now tire shaped as opposed to floppy. I'm gonna put that valve right next to that colorful label. This allows me that if I have another flat tire in the future, I can make sure that I can still use that valve as a point of reference. I'm gonna start with the valve. Find the hole in my rim for the valve, which is right here, right underneath my middle finger, okay? And I'm gonna go ahead and put that inner tube valve right in through that hole so it starts to stick through. And I'm gonna start moving my hands and pulling that tire into the center of that rim. Once I get to this point, it's gonna be a little bit more difficult. So instead of pulling, I'm gonna use my grip to actually just push that tire into the rim bead right in there, okay? Now, that's the easy part. Starting again at the valve, I'm gonna squeeze. I'm not forcing anything. I'm squeezing my hands right where that tire is coming out of the rim. That point right there where it goes in to the rim, I squeeze right there. That's basically stretching this tire like a rubber band right into place. I want to make sure that that inner tube is not getting caught in any way, and really all I'm doing is squeezing. Even though I've got mechanic's hands, it's not as difficult as it may look. Now you've got your tire on, let's go ahead and pump it up to the proper pressure. Setting it to the minimum pressure is going to be key, and use your gauge so that it goes to the proper pressure. I've got my arrow set, and now you've got a fully inflated tire.